welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about magic. That's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Shauna,
I'm Leslie.
and today we are bringing you another pre-con deep dive into the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms new commander decks that are coming out. In this video, we're going to break down all of the cards in the deck and talk to you about what this deck is meant to do and how to use it wisely, hopefully. And if you wait until the end, we'll offer you some suggestions for tweaking this deck to make it even better.
Mm-hmm.
Without further ado, I'm going to let Leslie tell you about this deck's commander and what it's meant to do.
Absolutely. So this deck that we're talking about today is called Aura of Courage. And our commander is Gale Kindler of Hope. She is a 4 mana cost commander with green, white, and blue in her commander identity. She is a 4/4 vigilance, and she allows you to look at the top card of your library at any time. And the fun thing about her is you can cast auras and equipment spells from the top of your library. So you have that extra card in your hand and you can cast them from the top. The nice thing about casting them from the top is that when you cast an equipment spell from the top, you don't have to pay its equip cost. Of course, auras, if you cast them, they go on to a creature right away. So basically, you're going to be building up your creatures right off the bat without having to worry about equipping. There's a few other things in this deck that also allow you to equip for cheaper or for free, which is wonderful. And I think that what we were kind of talking about, the goal of this deck is to build something up very big and just swing aggressively. And uh, I guess what they call it is Voltron. I don't even know what that is from, but that's the term. But basically, you make something super big and swing in for lots. Your commander is a 4/4 with vigilance, so probably your commander, but there's other cards that you might want to move your equipment onto. But yeah, so that's the goal of this deck.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get started though, Shauna, why don't you break down the deck as far as the types and curve and what's in this deck?
Okay. So for the mana curve, it's actually fairly low on the mana curve. There are 13 cards at the 1 mana, 21 at 2, 3, or sorry, 10 at 3. And then after that, there's like 18 after that. So it's actually not too bad. It's fairly fast. The color breakdown, there are 14 green cards, 10 multicolor, 11 blue, 14 colorless, and 13 white. So lots of artifacts in this one. As far as when we break down the card types goes, we do have 29% is artifacts, so 18 artifacts, 16 creatures, so not very many creatures, and 17.7% or 11 sorcery and instant cards, and then 17 enchantments.
Yeah, over half the deck is artifacts and
Yeah,
enchantments. So,
that's crazy. So, Leslie, tell
mhm.
us a little bit about the commander formula that we like to use when we evaluate decks.
Absolutely. So this is not the formula. This is a formula. It's what we use to break down our decks and just get a kind of sense of, do we have enough balance? Of course, in any deck, you're going to fluctuate up and down in any of these categories. And we'll just say the caveat as far as high impact cards. Of course, if you can put high impact cards that also help you with some of these other things like ramp and removal, then that is also a huge benefit. So remember that when you're filling your deck. But there's nothing worse than saying, I'm going to make a dragon deck or an angel deck, and I have like all these really high mana cost, high impact cards, and you can't play them because you don't have enough ramp. So this is kind of how we break down our decks, as well as we find most of the precons that are released fit fairly closely into this mold. So,
Mm.
commander deck formula, of course, you have one commander. You want around 15 cards to ramp up your deck and make things cheaper or get mana out on the battlefield. You can use mana rocks for that as well. You want approximately 15 removal cards because removal is very important. Card draw, you want to be able to get more cards in your hand once you don't have any. So 13 of those. High impact cards, we say about 12. And then Other cards on theme / win condition / support, or cards that can go in any of the other categories. You have about 10 to play with that can kind of go in wherever. So this is kind of the main formula we use. Land around 34. Some people like to have lots of land and up to 38, 39 land. Some people are really, really risky and they go lower than that, but 34 is kind of what we
Yeah.
feel is a good sweet spot. So when we break this down for you today, we're going to talk about each of those categories, which cards fit into those categories. And then at the end, when we tweak, we'll talk to you about kind of how you can maybe remove some stuff and put some better cards in there. So,
Yeah.
what's our first category?
The first category is those ramp and mana generating cards. So the formula calls for about 15. This deck has about 10. There are some other ones as well that fit into a couple different categories. But the first one is the Ever Faithful Paradise Druid for 1 and a green, a 2/1 that has hexproof as long as it's not tapped. And you can tap for mana of any color, which is really handy.
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about this one in this deck too is because it has hexproof in and of itself, you can
Mm-hmm.
attach all of those auras and equipment to it, and it's harder to
Yeah.
kill.
Yeah.
Nature's Lore for 1 and a green. It searches your library for a forest card, put that onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So it's just a basic search for a land card and kind of ramp up and be able to play those bigger cards.
Then we've got the Sword of the Animist, which is a really, in this deck especially, a really handy equipment that gives your creature +1/+1 for 2. You equip for 2, and whenever it attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. So that's really going to get you going if you can swing in with an equipped creature with that on.
Yeah, that's really good ramp. So sometimes if
Mm-hmm.
you have less ramp, having something like this, like a really good ramp card, is an option. Arcane Signet is an okay ramp card. I like this card. I love that they added it. This came out when Brawl decks came out, and it's pretty much in every commander deck these days.
Yep.
Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. If you're lucky enough to get turn 1 Soul Ring and Arcane Signet, then you're golden.
Yep. Explorer Scope is I really like this card. It's a 1 cost equipment that whenever the equipped creature attacks, you look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you can put it on the battlefield tapped. It's also just really good to know what's coming up. But I guess with your commander in this deck, you know that anyways. But when it's not out, you can use this as well.
Yeah, and then of course we have turn 1 Soul Ring. We have a Soul Ring that you hopefully get out on turn 1,
Yeah.
as we talked about. It doesn't happen all the time, hardly ever, but when it does, it's always a good thing, and everyone at the table targets you.
Yeah. Abundant Growth for 1 green. It's an enchantment that you put onto when it enters the battlefield. You put it onto your land. You get to draw a card. So it's also some card draw there. But that mana then becomes 1 mana of any color. So that's really helpful too.
Nice little fixing. Fertile Ground for 1 and a green. You get to enchant a land again, and whenever it's tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of any color. So it turns that 1 land into
Extra.
2.
Utopia Sprawl for green. You enchant one of your forests with this aura, and it enters the battlefield. You choose a color, and whenever an enchanted forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana of the chosen color to his or her mana pool.
And another enchant land is Wild Growth for 1. And when enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional. So very similar or pretty much exactly the same as Fertile Ground, making those lands a little bit better. So that's pretty much it for our ramp. The other thing that's kind of important in this deck specifically that I'll say about ramp is that while you're going to be possibly playing equipment off the top of your library and not having to equip it, if that creature dies for whatever reason, you will need to equip it. So you do need to have that land on the battlefield, and you do need ways of getting kind of additional benefits of that.
Mm-hmm. Then we're jumping into the removal section. So the formula calls for about 15. The deck has about 13. And Leslie tell you about the first one.
Sure, I can do that. Valiant Endeavor. is 4 and 2 white sorcery. This is one of our new cards that comes out with Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. You get to roll 2d6, choose one of those results, and you get to destroy each creature, which includes your own, with power greater than or equal to the results. Then create a number of 2/2 white knight creature tokens with vigilance equal to the other result. So some choice that you need to make there after you roll your 2d6, depending on whether you want to destroy more things or create more knights. But I love that there's kind of a little, that's the cool thing about this set, is just like you roll and then you figure it out. So it's cool.
Here we have an adventure card from Throne of Eldraine, the Realm Cloak Giant. It's for 5 and 2 white, a 7/7 giant that does have a sorcery called Cast Off on it that lets you first play for 3 and 2 white and destroy all non-giant creatures. Kaboom! Board wipe.
Yeah. So that would be one of the cards that it's a removal card, but it also kind of fits in the high impact depending on if
for
you
sure.
Yeah. Same with this next one. Angel of Finality is a 3/4 angel for 4. She's got flying, and when she enters the battlefield, you get to exile all cards from target player's graveyard. So you can get rid of that person that is playing shenanigans or dungeons, whatever that happens to be. So there's some good high impact stuff there, but really this card is for the removal. So.
Knight of Autumn for 1, a green and a white, a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you get to choose to either put a 2/1/1 counters on it or destroy target artifact or enchantment. Or if you're desperate, gain 4 life.
And I'm glad you said that, because really gaining life is irrelevant unless it is
Especially
a mechanic in your thing. Yeah. Acidic Slime has kind of double removal because it's a 5 mana cost 2/2 with Death Touch. So you have a creature with Death Touch, which helps you not be attacked or kill something that they're attacking with. But when it enters the battlefield, you also get to destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. All 3 are very valid things that you may want to do, and so there's it's a pretty big staple in Commander these days. Yeah, good old Acidic Slime.
Winds of Wrath for 3 and 2 white. It's a destroy all creatures sorcery. For only the ones that aren't enchanted, though, so that will help you because you've got enchantments on yours, and they can't be regenerated. So you're going to get rid of everybody else's creatures, hopefully.
Valorous Stance for 2 is an instant. You get to choose one. Target creature gains indestructible until the end of turn, or destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater. So we did put this in the removal section. However, when we were talking about this, we did talk a lot about how do you save your creatures from dying once you finally have them enchanted. You have this great big creature. It is going to be a target, and people will try to kill it. So if you have enough mana and you can keep this in your hand to save your creature and give it indestructible at instant speed, then that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Then we have the Bant Charm for a green, a white, and a blue. It's an instant that you can choose to destroy a target artifact, put a target creature on the bottom of its owner's library, or counter target instant spell. So depending on what you need, that's a really useful little tool there.
Good, another way to save your creatures too, right? Argentum Armor, thank you. Argentum, I was like doing my phonics. When E follows G, anyway. Argentum Armor for 6, don't need a phonics lesson. It's an artifact equipment. It gives the creature +6/+6, and whenever a creature attacks, you get to destroy a target permanent. Now the equip cost is 6 on this, but if it happens to be on the top of your library and you have your commander out, then you get to play it and then equip it for free. So that thing that you're going to be swinging in with, you just get +6/+6 and get to destroy something right away. So this does have the potential to be a fairly good card. Plus, it has some great removal.
Yeah. Imprisoned in the Moon for 2 and a blue. It's an enchantment aura that you put onto a creature, land, or planeswalker, which is interesting. And that enchanted permanent then just becomes a colorless land with tap and add a colorless land to your mana pool and loses all other abilities. So it's a great way to get rid of something that is really important to them. You're just going to enchant it and turn it into a boring old land.
I mean, it's a great way to help someone out when they don't have enough land to play, right?
Yeah, sure.
Gonna help you out. Kenrith's Transformation for 2, 1 and a green is an enchantment, or you get to enchant a creature, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. So it kind of fits in that card draw as well. But enchanted creature, you loses all abilities and is a green elk creature with base power and toughness of 3/3. So it removes their thing from the game. It also has card draw, so it's a nice aura to have in this.
This one, Clay Golem, it's new to this set, I believe, and it's a 4/4 for 4, just a golem that when it becomes monstrous, you get to destroy target permanent. So the fact of it becoming monstrous is going to be really awesome too. But you pay 6 and roll a d8, and X, whatever you roll there, you get that many +1 counters onto this guy. So that could potentially make a really big golem for you. Plus, it's going to destroy a card that you don't want to have on the other side of the table.
I mean, it's so great because even if you roll a 1, which is a potential, you're still destroying something and making it a 5/5. So there's nothing wrong with that at all, even if you roll just a 1. And the likelihood is, I mean, laws of probabilities and averages is it's going to be 4. So it's going to be an 8/8, which would be awesome. So now we move into the card draw section. These are card draws, tutors, things that kind of allow you to know what's coming. So scrying and searching and all that fun stuff. The first one that we have is another new one. It has a rolling ability, Diviner's Portent. It is 3 blue and X. And then you get to roll a d20 and add the number of cards in your hand. So maybe you roll that's crazy, but a 15 or 11, let's say 10 is the average. You roll a 10. So you draw X cards based on adding the number of cards in your hand, right? So you roll a d20 and add the number of cards in your hand. And then that gets you, it's X is whatever you paid for it. And then, you get to add the cards in your hand to your draw. So it's like a modifier, just like your ability, your dexterity modifier. I guess this would be your intelligence modifier in D&D. So you get to add your intelligence modifier. The likelihood is if you do this earlier, then you're going to get to scry a lot more and draw. So that's great. Either way, you get to draw.
Yeah. Then we have Netherese Puzzle Wand for 3 and a blue. It is an enchantment that has Focus Beam. At the beginning of your upkeep, you roll a d4, and then you get to scry X, where X is the result of that roll. And then you have Perfect Illumination. Whenever you roll a die's highest natural result, you get to draw a card. So that's kind of cool. You get the 4, and then, well, anytime that happens, really. So that's pretty awesome.
Definitely.
Dice rolling.
And this one has dice rolling too, so that's good. Song of Inspiration for 3 and 2 green is an instant, and you get to choose up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard. You roll a d20 and add the total number of, or the total mana value of those cards to that. And then that gives you your result. If you have 1 to 14, you return those cards to your hand. If you have 15 plus, return those cards to your hand and gain life equal to their total mana value. So if you pick your big beefy creatures, the likelihood is your modifier is going to be high enough to get the mana or the life gain as well. So some choice.
Cool. And you get back from the graveyard. That's awesome. Pure Steel Paladin for 2 white. It's a 2/2 little knight that has, whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you get to draw a card if you want. So that's really handy, especially in this deck. And you have Metalcraft. So equipment you control have equipped 0 as long as you have 3 or more artifacts. So yeah, you're gonna have it. And this is another way to get that equip 0 thing happening.
Yeah. Shram, the Senior Edificer. This is a favorite in pretty much every artifact deck out there, especially when you're talking auras and equipments, and he will draw you some cards for sure. So 2 mana, whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. So again, over half this deck is auras and equipment. You're going to draw whatever you need.
Cold-Eyed Selkie for 1 and 2 hybrid blue-green mana. It's a little 1/1 Merfolk Rogue that has Island Walk, so it can't be blocked if as long as the defending player has an island. So whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw that many cards. Buff that up and draw extra cards. Sweet.
And I love the unblockable portion of this because, again, Voltron, you want to be able to get in. Riverwise Augur for 3 and a blue is a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. This one is not a new card, but it is definitely a good card. Basically, you're adding some cards, and then you get to just decide what you don't quite need yet and do some planning. So there's lots of manipulation you can do with that one.
Then we have Serum Visions, which is 1 blue to draw a card, and you get to scry too. So it's really great to see this card coming out a lot more often lately.
Yeah, it's helping bring the value of it down. It's usually an expensive card, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Brainstorm is an instant. Draw 3 cards, put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. So very similar to the one that we just talked about, but only 1 mana cost for that one.
Nice. Greater Good for 2 and 2 green. It's an enchantment that you get to sacrifice a creature and then draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power and discard 3 cards. So yeah, that could be interesting.
And Angelic Gift, this is one that will definitely do work for you beyond drawing a card. We put it in the card draw just because you get to draw a card when it enters the battlefield. But essentially, you're going to give something flying, again, giving it evasion, making it harder for people to block it, or at least some people are on the table to block it. Probably Shauna, but there's always going to be one other person with flying, but, there's also going to be lots that don't have flying.
The Curse of Verbosity. This is an enchantment that you put onto onto a player. It's a curse. So you enchant the player, and whenever the enchanted player is attacked, you get to draw a card. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. So these are those politics cards that less live so much. So you give that to someone, and everyone wants to swing at them instead of you. Nice.
And this one forces them to swing at somebody else. Psychic Impetus. Any of the impetuses are good. There's only 1 in this deck, but you could definitely add more. Enchant Creature. An enchanted creature gets +2/+2, which is super great for the person you give it to, but it's goaded, which means it can't attack you. And whenever it attacks, you get to scry too. So you're getting some information. You're not being attacked. It's awesome.
All right, now we are moving into the high impact cards. The formula calls for 12, and the deck has about 12. Storvald, you could use this as your commander if you wanted to. It is a frost giant jarl thing, so it's a huge giant basically. For 4, a green, a white, and a blue, it's a 7/7 with ward 3. So ward means that they can't do anything to it unless they pay 3 extra. So that's really handy. That just came out. And other creatures you control have ward 3 as well. So he really helps out your other creatures. So there's that protection piece again. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you choose one or both. So target creature has base power and toughness of 7/7 until end of turn, or target creature has base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn. So that's a great way to make yours big and theirs small.
And you can choose one or both when you that's just crazy. That's a crazy card. I love it.
Yeah.
And then we have the Holy Avenger. This is a nice little equipment for 2 and a white. It's an equipped creature gets double strike, And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, you may put an aura card from your hand onto the battlefield attached to it. So you're getting to play things from your hand for free and put them onto your creatures for free. So you're just going to keep getting bigger. And it's as it attacks, so you're potentially buffing it up as it attacks and getting some crazy stuff in.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Mantle of the Ancients. It's for 3 and 2 white, and another enchantment aura that you enchant on your creature. And when it enters the battlefield, return any number of target aura and or equipment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to this creature. Oof. And then that enchanted creature gets +1 and +1 for each aura and equipment attached to it. That's really awesome. Even if
Mm-hmm.
you lose your stuff, you can get it back again. Sweet.
Yeah. Then we have Catti Brie, the Mithril of Mithril Hall. She is a legendary creature in and of herself. She could be a commander. But in this deck, she is a 2/2 for 2 with first strike and reach. Nothing wrong with having a reach creature on the battlefield. And whenever Catti Brie of Mithril Hall attacks, you get to put a 1/1 counter on it for each equipment attached to it. And it's a counter, so you're just going to keep making her bigger based on the number of equipment. Then you also have the ability that you can pay 1 and remove all 1/1 counters from Catti Brie, and it deals that much damage to target attacking or blocking creature and opponent controls. So yeah, some nice big removal with her as well. So she does a lot, which is why she reaches the high
She's a
impact.
hard worker.
She's a hard worker, of course.
Then we have the Sword of Hours for 2. It's a little equipment that whenever the equipped creature attacks, you get to put a +1 counter on it. So wow, think of that with little Catti Brie. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, you roll a d12, and if the result is greater than the damage dealt or the result is 12, you get to double the number of +1 counters on that creature. Whoa, that could get a little bit nuts.
Yep. Got lots of fun counters. You know what? We didn't put as a tweak in this. It's Ozolith. But we probably should have.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever phase speed attacks, another target attacking creature you control gains indestructible until the end of turn. This is our phase speed for 2 and 2 white. It's a 4/4. And when a creature or planeswalker you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may also draw a card. So there's some card draw there. It's a 4/4 for 4. It gains indestructible until, or another target creature gains indestructible till the end of turn when it attacks. So it's a nice little elk that does some work for you.
Yeah, it's going to protect your friends and make people not want to do stuff. Prognostic Sphinx for 3 and 2 blue. It's a 3/5 Sphinx that has flying, and you can discard a card and give it hexproof until end of turn. You have to tap it though for that, but at least you've saved him. And whenever it attacks, you get to scry 3. So that's going to make you want to swing with it, but certainly a 3/5 flyer.
Yeah, with some extra abilities. Fleecemane Lion, of course, I get to talk about the cats. It's a 3/3 for 2, which in and of itself is amazing. You can pay 5 to make it monstrous by adding a 1/1 counter on it. It's got monstrosity 1. And as long as it's monstrous, it has hexproof and indestructible. So get it on the battlefield, make it monstrous as soon as you can, and start putting those enchantments and equipment on it, and you'll be golden.
Moonsilver Spear for 4. It's an equipment that gives your equipped creature first strike, and whenever your creature attacks, you get to put a 4/4 white angel on the battlefield as well.
That one's going in my library.
Gosh, yes.
I love that.
So
I mean, that's not even a new card. I didn't know about this card. Why did I not know?
Yeah,
anyway.
I don't know.
I don't know. Verdant Embrace for 3 and 2 green. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3 and has at the beginning of each upkeep create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. So nice little aura that also creates some fun little sapperlings
friends
for blockers. Yeah.
Rancor for 1 green. It is an enchantment aura that gives your creature +2/+0 and trample.
Mm-hmm.
That's always good to have when you have a big beefy boy. And when
Yeah.
it is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you get to return it to its owner's hand, so it never
Mm-hmm.
goes away.
Yeah.
Hang on to that one.
Hang on to that one. And Shielding Plaques is an enchantment aura for 2 and hybrid mana. So 3 enchant creature. When Shielding Plaques enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. So there's some extra there. An enchanted creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. So basically gains hexproof and makes it really hard to kill.
No. Now we've moved into the other cards on theme or other win conditions, other supporting cards. The formula calls for about 10 and the deck has about 14. So we've got little things like artifacts and other creatures in here. So we've got the Robe of Stars for 1 and a white. It's an artifact equipment that gives your equipped creature +0/+3. And Astral Projection, you can pay 1 and a white and equipped creature phases out. And yeah, so that way you've got a little bit of protection there. If your creature's going to get hurt, you can phase it out and save it.
There's a board wipe too, if it's
It's not
targeted, or
really
if there's a board
there.
wipe, you just like, you know what, we're just gonna phase out for a second and come back later. I love this little ebony fly. It's a 2 mana cost artifact. When it enters the battlefield tapped. You can use it for mana, which is great. But you can pay 4 and roll a d6. And until the end of turn, you may have ebony fly become an XX insect artifact creature token with flying, where X is the results. And when it attacks, another target attacking creature gains flying until the end of turn. So you're going to give something flying, you're going to get an extra creature out of it, or you can use it as land. So it does a lot of things for what it is. It's just a nice little 2/2 artifact. Nothing wrong with that. I like it. It's a good filler for this deck, and I definitely would keep that
one. All right. And Winged Boots for 1 and a blue. It's some little equipment here, blue equipment that lets you give your creature flying and ward 4. So that's going to be handy, protecting your creatures. And yeah, its equip cost is only 1. So even if it falls off, you can put it back on pretty easily.
And then Ride the Avalanche is kind of a fun one. It's for a blue and a green, so 2. It's an instant. And it says that the next spell that you cast this turn can be cast as though it has flash. So basically, now anything in your hand can be cast for an instant. And when you cast your next spell this turn, put X/1/1 counters on up to 1 target creature where X is the mana value of that spell. So because this is an instant, you can play it, of course, or you should play it during combat, whether it be while you're blocking or attacking. And then it allows you could play a creature, you could play another sorcery, you could play an enchantment, anything you want, basically, and give something
Oh my gosh,
a bunch of counters at the same time. I would probably use this while I was blocking. Basically, you play it and then you declare your blockers and then you cast something else and you put counters on something and put a creature out on the battlefield as well. And all of a sudden what they thought they could do, now they can't because they have, right? You're riding the avalanche. It's crazy, this card. there's a few triggers to take care of. But yeah.
Yeah. The Belt of Giant Strength for 1 and a green. It is a green equipment that gives your equipped creature base power and a toughness of 10/10. Excuse me. But the equipment is 10. But what if you do that for free? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This ability costs X less to activate, where X is the power of the creature it targets. So, hey, it might not even cost 10 even if you're paying for it. So that this could be potentially insane.
Especially with all those equipment that are going to buff it up already, right? So its power is going to be good. So we talked about protecting your creatures. Well, this also has Heroic Intervention in it, which is a good card in and of itself just to have. So buying this deck gets you that card. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. Again, saves it. You're inevitably going to get board wipes. You're inevitably going to get targeted by having a big beefy bull trunk creature.
Then we have Viridian Longbow. It is a equipment that says your equipped creature you can tap it and it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. And the equip is 3. So you can use this to make your little guys get through with damage if you want to. So that's kind of helpful.
And if you have this on it, Basilisk Collar for 1, equipped creature has Death Touch and Lifelink. So now that 1 damage that you just did is Death Touch damage, and it's removal as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good card. It's hard to find. So that's awesome. The next one's hard to find too. The Behemoth Sledge. Nobody wants to give it up because it's so awesome. For 1 and a green and a white, it is an equipment that lets your creature have +2/+2 lifelink and trample. And its equip cost is only 3. So even if you're paying for it, it's still pretty awesome.
And this one's a fun one, and it works really well in this deck. Colossus Hammer for 1. Most people don't play with it because its equip cost is 8, which is a really high equip cost, but it gives creatures +10/+10. It does lose flying, but if you can equip this for free, then all of a sudden now you're playing your Colossus Hammer off the top of your deck for 1, and it equips, and that creature gets +10/+10. So we did put it in the other cards because what if it's not on the top of your deck? Then it does cost more. So it doesn't merit the high impact, but yeah.
Put that with the sledge and then you're really doing well. And then you add the Swift boots on there for 2. A little equipment that gives it hexproof and haste. So hey, that could be game ending.
Yeah,
that little combination.
Griffspoon is another nice one. Enchant creature. It gets +1/+0 and has flying. But it also has, you can pay 4 and return Griffspoon from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to target creature. Activate this ability only as you would cast a sorcery. So basically, if something does die and this does happen to go to your graveyard, that's okay, because you can then now play it from your graveyard and give something flying as it enters. So
Eel Umbra for 1 in the blue. It's a little aura that has flash. So use this to protect your creatures because it pops in there and your creature gets +1/+1. So it's a great little combat trick enchantment. So that's handy.
And Masterwork of Ingenuity is a 1 mana cost artifact equipment, and you can have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any equipment on the battlefield. Any equipment at all.
Any equipment. That's
it would have the same equipment cost and abilities, but it's a pretty good card.
Oh my
word! A great one.
So then we're going into lands, and we thought that we would just so there's 38 lands in this deck, and kind of the same lands that you would expect in these kinds of decks. So nothing too crazy in there. Path of Ancestries, Simic Growth Chambers, Evolving Wilds, those sorts of things. So that's a really good place to look to upgrade is in there. And with 38 of them, you might not need that many, but kind of weigh that out and see what you want to do about that.
I definitely think in this deck you can take some land out just because the mana curve is so low. And you're going to be equipping stuff for free. You don't want to take too much out, but this is definitely a place that you could look if you were going to tweak, as well as some of those other cards on theme. Some of them I would definitely leave in there because they're great, but there's a few that are like, this is okay. So if you had something that you found that was a better equipment or something, then of course, we're going to go into our tweaks right away here as well. That's where you would look to try and see if there was something that you wanted to replace.
Yeah. So jumping into those tweaks, then one of the cards that I really like to play in my artifact decks is the Daring Archaeologist. It's from Dominaria, a 3/3 for 3 and a white. It's a human artificer, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return a target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. And then whenever you cast a historic spell, so historic spells are sagas, artifacts, legendary creatures like your commander. So whenever you cast any of those things, this guy gets a +1 counter. So that could potentially be a pretty big uh, dude that you can attach some equipment to. So
Hmm.
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
It's
we
always done
definitely
good work for
thought
me.
that if somebody does wipe all your enchantments or wipe all your artifacts, you do need ways of getting them back. Same with your
Mm-hmm.
creatures. If you weren't able to protect them, we thought, adding some stuff to protect those in would be good as well as stuff to bring them back. So
Yeah.
the other one that I like to play is actually a land, Rogue's Passage. The reason I thought this would be good, or that we thought this would be good for this deck, is just because there's nothing worse than having something sitting on the battlefield that they can just chump block for one.
Mm,
If it doesn't have trample, then it doesn't matter how big it is. They can just block it with their little 1/1 snake, and it
yeah.
doesn't. Yeah. Or if they have a Death Toucher or something and can just kill it,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it doesn't have indestructible. Rogue's Passage allows it to be not blocked, and then you don't have to worry about that.
Calyx Destiny's Hand is a little planeswalker that just came out recently. It's for 2 in a green and a white that really we thought fit in with this deck. It's 4 loyalty, and its +1 is look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment card from among them and put that card into your hand, and then you put the rest in the bottom of your library in random order. Or it's got a little removal piece where you have -3, you exile a target creature or enchantment you don't control until target enchantment you control leaves the battlefield. So you kind of protect yourself with that thing. And -7, if you can get there, is return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that's something to shoot for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Estrid the Masked is also a great possible addition to this deck for 1 and a green and a blue and a white, which are your commander's identity colors, which is great. You get a 3 loyalty planeswalker. It has +2, untap each enchanted permanent you control. So if you've swung in, you can untap them at the end on your second main phase so that they're good blockers,
Mm.
which is great. You can also -1 to create a white aura enchantment token named Mask attached to another target permanent. The totem has enchant permanent and totem armor. Um, so totem armor, correct me if I'm wrong, is
Mm.
basically they have to get rid of the totem armor before they can target that creature. So
I think
anytime they
so.
tar- anytime they target a creature with totem armor, you just remove 1 totem armor, and you can keep putting armor on it until, so they have to get rid of all of those before they can, yeah, which is
Yeah.
great. And then her -7 is put the top 7 cards of your library into your graveyard. Return all non-aura enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then do the same for aura cards. So basically, you're getting all your enchantments
Oof.
back. Um, and she could be your commander if you really want. So you could switch her out at some point and have her on the battlefield.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Hannah, Ship's Navigator. It's a little 1/2 human artificer for 1 a white and a blue that you can pay that 1 white and a blue again and tap her and return target artifact or enchantment from your graveyard to your hand. So it's a really useful ongoing returning of that good stuff that you have
Mm-hmm.
in your bin.
Well, and because an Open the Vaults is the same as a sorcery for 6,
Mm-hmm.
return all artifacts and enchantment cards uh, from all graveyards to the battlefield under your control. So they come straight to the battlefield under your control. And sometimes, even if somebody hasn't board wiped all of your artifacts and enchantments, that targeted removal on that thing that is giving your creature hexproof, or that thing that is giving your creature indestructible, you want to be able to return it to your hand and play it again to protect your creature. So
Sweet. Speaking of protection, here is Dark Steel Plate. It's not a cheap equipment, but it if you have one, use it. It's for 3 and it gives your creature indestructible, or it's indestructible and your creature gets indestructible. So it's really hard for them to get rid of. Really
mm-hmm.
hard.
Yeah, especially if you have Shalai Voice of Plenty out, and maybe you put Dark Steel Plate on Shalai Voice of Plenty. So this is a
Oh
3/4
gosh.
flyer. You and planeswalkers you control and other creatures you control have hexproof, and then you can pay 6 and put 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So just keeps buffing everything up, giving them hexproof, and if you can protect her, you can also add everything to her and swing in. She's a flyer. I mean, she'll do work for you if you put her in this.
It's crazy. Veil of Summer is a little instant that only costs a green, and you can draw a card if your opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn, and spells you control can't be countered at all that turn, and you and permanents you control get hexproof and from blue and from black until end of turn. It's, yeah, especially against blue black, obviously, but yeah. Who doesn't have blue black these days? Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
Not me.
No.
Avacyn, Angel of Hope, is a 5 and 3 white, so she is quite expensive. So she's an 8/8 for 8, but she has flying, vigilance, and she's indestructible. And other permanents you control have indestructible. So not only your enchantments, or not only your creatures, but your enchantments and your artifacts also have indestructible because they're permanents. Your land also has indestructible. Because
Jeez.
so I mean, if you get her on the battlefield, suddenly you win the game. So she might be a really good addition. She is going to be a more expensive addition, but she might be worth it. Of course, you can't rely on one card though, so you have to have a good balance.
Yeah, and no one's going to want to play with you anyways. So
right, yeah, after you play that.
Then we have my handsome friend Halvar, God of Battle. It's a 4/4 for 2 and 2 white legendary creature god. Creatures you control that are enchanted or equipped have double strike. Sweet. And at the beginning of each combat, you may attach a target aura or equipment to a creature you control. So you can move things around if you want to at the beginning of combat, every combat, including your defense as well.
Yeah. It's great. And this is another one that lets you move things around. Maybe you've played it for free onto the only creature you have on the battlefield, and now you have more creatures. Arden, the Intrepid Archaeologist, is 2 and a white for 2/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of auras and equipments you control to target permanent you control. The nice thing about this is it's not just your equipment moving around, your auras can move around as well, which is fantastic. Normally, once you play them on a creature, they're there and they don't move. So
that's
yeah.
nice.
So those are the cards that we thought would be good tweaks. Of course, there's lots of things you could do with tweaks in this deck. There's lots of good equipment out there. There's lots of good auras out there. What did we say for the counters? The Ozolith is a nice artifact that could go in here. I'm thinking of like Scytheclaw and all of those crazy artifacts and things that could go well, and even Mirari's Wake for extra mana. So of course there's stuff out there. We want to hear from you what you think would be good additions to this deck. We kind of aim for a mid-level deck with our tweaks, and so you could go higher than that if you really wanted to. But yeah, so that's it for this time. We hope you had a great time. We hope you have a great time playing this deck. Let us know what you think. Also, if you like what you saw, please hit that like button and subscribe button. You can find us live 3 times a week on Twitch, so we'd love to see you there. Reach out to us on Twitter, say hello, and until next time,
tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Thanks.
Bye, guys.